As we mentioned, North Korea is continuing to act aggressively with this latest nuclear test. President Trump spoke with South Korean President Moon Jae-in on Monday. They agreed to boost South Korea's missile capabilities and apply tougher sanctions on North Korea. Zeke Miller is a CBSN political contributor and White House reporter for Time. He joins us now from Washington. Zeke, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley spoke at Monday's emergency UN session. She used some tough language to condemn Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, certainly. Her language there was the latest escalating rhetoric we've heard from the White House in the last several days. Jim Mattis coming out after sort of in the immediate aftermath of that apparent nuclear test, as well. It's a clear indication that the president is fed up with the North Korean issue. That said, as David laid out a few minutes ago, they're from a military perspective, there are not very many options. They're looking at the diplomatic one. The president tweeting yesterday about getting sort of potentially curtailing U.S. trade with any country that does business with North Korea. Obviously, that would have massive economic implications both here and around the globe. But there are other sort of more subtle levers that the president is exploring. Sort of folks at the White House have been telling me in the recent days. That said, they've went down this path before trying to get China to pressure North Korea, and China seems to be at the end of its leverage there. So they're running out of options, and everything that remains isn't very good either.
I just want to play for our audience what Nikki Haley said at this emergency session of the UN. Let's listen.
His abusive use of missiles and his nuclear threats show that he is begging for war. War is never something the United States wants. We don't want it now. But our country's patience is not unlimited. We will defend our allies and our territory.
Our country's patience is not unlimited, Ambassador Haley says. Zeke, is it clear what the Trump administration's policy is toward North Korea right now and what its strategy is?
Well, what they say it's not is, quote unquote, strategic patience, which is a language that the Obama administration used to define their strategy toward North Korea. Their precise, sort of what they intend to do isn't exactly clear. They have said over and again that they won't allow North Korea to have a nuclear threat capable of hitting the continental United States, except that seems to be that threshold seems to have been crossed or will be crossed very, very shortly as they've been able to rapidly get there. So if their position is that there can't be a persistent nuclear threat from North Korea, then if that is the policy, it's not quite clear yet how they intend to implement it, and that's certainly the sort of thing we'll be looking to hear from the White House in the coming days and weeks.
Is there a sense that the national security team is in crisis mode right now over the North Korea nuclear test?
Obviously, there was the weekend meeting, which is very unusual, at the White House with the president and the senior national security team. We saw Jim Mattis come out, Nikki Haley again today, but there's not sort of the sense of persistent, that anything is imminent, as David mentioned. Just, there's no change to U.S. military posture either. That said, there is a growing sense of urgency to try to create at least some diplomatic space, if not military one, on the issue.
I want to move on to another topic, and that is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, known as DACA, also known as the Dreamers Act. The president is to make a decision, we know about this, on Tuesday. Which way are you hearing the president is leaning, and how is Washington bracing for that decision?
Yeah, certainly. What I've been told by a couple of administration officials is that the president is expected to end the program after a 6-month waiting period, and that will provide time for Congress to act, obviously. And everyone in Washington has been sort of expecting this decision coming down in the last couple of days and weeks. It sort of follows that tomorrow is the deadline that was artificially set by a bunch of Republican attorneys general who threatened a lawsuit over the Obama-era executive action if the president didn't roll it back. So they're looking for some space there. Obviously, Republicans and Washington Democrats. This program is broadly popular among Americans. They want to find a way to save it. That will likely have to be legislatively after the president makes his announcement tomorrow.
And even last week, we heard Republicans, influential Republicans, including Paul Ryan and Senator Orrin Hatch, come out saying they don't support the president necessarily abandoning DACA. This puts the ball in Congress's court. Do you believe that the prospects are good that these dreamers will see a legislative solution that will allow them to continue working in this country without the fear of deportation?
It's looking at this Congress and its inability to get even the simplest things done over the last 7 or 8 months. It's hard to sort of make a firm prognostication there. That said, there is a strong desire in both parties to get this thing fixed, and even the senior Republican leadership understands that the political consequences of this being repealed, of this being rolled back without any sort of permanent legislative fix would be politically disastrous for them, if not sort of also potentially morally and from a policy perspective as well.
Is it politically complicated for Trump to abandon DACA right now? Obviously, during his campaign last year, getting rid of DACA and the executive order was a cornerstone of his campaign. But as you say, this is a pretty popular act.
Certainly, this follows the pattern of actions by the president over the last several months that have been designed to strengthen his core base. This is something that he promised his supporters on the campaign, though then subsequently walked back during the transition in his first couple of months in office. This, like the transgender service member policy, at least an indication that the president is trying to activate his base at the expense of sort of more broadly popular programs.
Congress is back in session, as you know, Zeke, this week, and tax reform is supposed to be on the top of the agenda as well. What are you hearing on that front? It's probably not going to be on the top of the agenda for long. Hurricane Harvey relief, sort of the need for an immediate supplemental for disaster assistance funding, keeping the government open at the end of the month, raising the debt limit, all of those things will have to happen. So tax reform will get a lot of, there's still a lot of negotiating around that happening, but it's looking, less like a September issue and more like a December issue in terms of when Congress can actually get it done. It might give Republicans some more time to get on the same page when it comes to tax reform. You mentioned the supplemental. The president is asking Congress to authorize nearly $8 billion in relief funding for Hurricane Harvey. What's the road ahead look like for passage of that funding?
It's potentially we'll see that coupled together with either a legislation to keep the government open or raise the debt limit, or potentially all three of those together as some sort of must-pass legislation towards the end of the month. Republicans are also talking about maybe moving even faster on that, trying to get it done this week. That said, again, everything in Congress faces an uncertain. It's uncertain times in Washington, and it's not really clear just what they can get done and how quickly they can get it done. Either way, this is just the first shot at this. They're going to need to appropriate a heck of a lot more money in the coming months and potentially years. So they need to move on this pretty fast, and that will be a sign to the Republicans to send to the American people that actually they can get something done.
Zeke Miller, thank you so much.
Thank you.